Ever since the new owners moved in, they've done a lot of decorating around this swimming pool. Hanging planters, the hibiscus, wall decorations, and today I'm going to show you how to make a living wreath, another kind of wall decoration. What we need is a prefabricated metal frame, and I think I'd like to put it right about here. And then we're going to put some sphagnum moss and some of this moss rose into it. Moss rose is also known as portulaca, and it blooms every day, all summer long, with different colored blossoms. One of the reasons for selecting moss rose, besides the fact that it blooms so well, is that it's a succulent plant and it handles heat and drought very well. Now our preformed wire form here has a detachable top. We're going to take that off and set it aside. Our next step is to take sphagnum moss and pre-moisten it. Sphagnum is really dry, and if we try to work with it this dry, it'll tend to break. We want it good and wet. We press it down into the water and give it a good squeeze. And then it'll come out in nice long shreds. And what we're going to do is line the exterior side of our form with the sphagnum moss. What we're doing with the sphagnum moss is trying to cover the wire frame so that it shows as little as possible when the project is complete. We don't need to cover the bottom, of course, because that'll be up against the wall when we hang it. Sphagnum is a long fibered moss which is frequently used in the horticultural industry as a decoration and to conceal things like our wire frame here. And it holds moisture very well. Once you get it wet, it acts kind of like a sponge. Our next step is to take a piece of ordinary polypropylene weed barrier type fabric. This will hold the soil inside the sphagnum, but we don't want to see this either. So we're going to fit it carefully down inside our sphagnum lined wire frame. Weed barrier is a product used in landscapes underneath mulch to keep weeds from coming up. Now, you can purchase it at any nursery or garden center. It's a polypropylene fabric, and you'll need a good pair of scissors to trim off any excess in your strip. Tuck it in, and then we'll begin filling it with potting soil. We may trim it again. We don't want the weed barrier to show. Next, we're going to take a bark-based potting soil. I prefer to use a bark-based potting soil over a peat moss-based potting soil because it doesn't dry out and become very difficult to wet again the way a peat soil does. You want to firm it up inside and keep pulling your sphagnum moss up so that it keeps that ring hidden. Firm the potting soil into the frame as you work, and don't overfill it. We've still got to get the plants in here. Now once you've got the fabric filled with the potting soil, take your scissors and trim off the excess fabric that would show once the planter is done. And then put the cover back on it. Well, let's make sure that the fabric covers the outer part of the ring. Put the top back on our frame. And now we're ready to begin planting our moss rose. It's much too difficult to put the cover on with the plants already in place. It seems logical to plant before you put it on, but it's too hard. Now, it may not look like it, but inside each one of these pots of moss rose are 4 individual plants. And I'm going to gently separate them. Piece of cake. Came apart easy. And then we're going to knock a little of the excess soil off and plant this right inside our ring. We really want to kind of almost crowd the plants because we want a really full look to our project when we're done with it. One of the interesting things about moss rose is that each plant may bloom with different colors tomorrow than it's blooming today. So each day your wreath may look different than it did the day before, and I like that. These so-called new and improved varieties of moss rose bloom the same color every day, day in and day out. I'm not so sure that's an improvement. Planting the moss rose is not, well, it's nothing like brain surgery, to tell the truth. We're just poking a hole in that soil and pressing our plants inside it and firming up the soil around them. When we get all done, we'll water them in well, and that'll firm all the roots up nice and tight. Once we've got all the plants in our ring that we can possibly fit in, our next step is to take more sphagnum moss and tuck it in under the ring and over the soil. What that'll do is help to hold the soil inside the ring, and it'll also cover it so it's not visible when it's hanging on our wall. Once you've covered all the topsoil with the sphagnum moss, the next step is to water it thoroughly. Every time you water your living wreath, you're going to take it off the wall, water it thoroughly, let it drip dry, and then rehang it. And don't worry, you can't possibly overwater it.